What's up, everybody? Welcome to Primarch Purpose. This is a series in which I take a look at what I think the ultimate endgame goal for the Primarchs might have been when the Emperor created them. The Primarch project was a very intensive project that he deliberately went and modified the Primarch gene stock, the base gene stock for Primarchs, modified them multiple different ways for each of the different Primarchs to achieve a very specific goal. I never really get to see this goal play out because of the heresy and so forth. So for this series, it's a bit of a what if. The intro overview goes over that in a bit more detail, but we're assuming some things. We're assuming, for example, I'll do a quick bullet point, that the Great Crusade is coming to a successful conclusion, so there's no heresy to worry about. We are assuming the Primarchs are alive, well, and loyal alongside their legions. They're still legions. And the Emperor is alive and running the Imperial Truth-driven Imperium. This means the Inquisition, as we know, does not exist, nor does its military factions. The Ecclesiarchy does not exist, nor does its military faction. And really, it's an Imperial Truth-driven Imperium. So we're still going to have plenty of strife, though. You know, all the Xenos that we know about in 40k Codex-wise will exist. Chaos is still a threat. There'll still be dark mechanical things and so forth, tech heresy and the like. But this is the assumption we're making for this series. And it's in this setting that we'll be taking a look at yet another Primarch. So this is going to be the Primarch of the 12th Legion. This is Angron, sometimes called the Red Angel. Angron the Angriest, I like to call him. A bit of a tragic Primarch, not often associated with the idea of tragedy, but Angron is. And this one requires definite suspension of disbelief a bit to get him to stay loyal to the Emperor, because this is a very clear, definitive thing in which we see all the writing is geared towards making him go traitor, right? Because he's meant to be a traitor, so the more info we get on him, the more it's purpose-built to kind of put him down that path. So, with that said, the big tragedy of Angron is we never truly get to see him standard. He's got the Butcher's Nails immediately from when he gets reunited. He already has that. In standard lore, the Emperor tries to take him from his planet on the eve of his last stand. Him and his gladiatory slaves that rebelled against the planet were actually failing. They were just outmatched. There wasn't enough of them. The oppressive government in charge was too strong, and Angron, despite all of his strength, would die in the coming battle, alongside his gladiators. So it's basically the eve of their last stand. The Emperor tried to reason with Angron to get him to go away from this, and he refused. So it's at the height of the battle that the Emperor whisks him away, and his gladiators get slaughtered. And it was a source of great shame for Angron, and pissed him off, and never really trusted the Emperor at all because of that. So from that information, we can see that Angron, while brutal and a bit berserk and assault-driven, obviously very aggressive and violent, has a sense of honor, his own sense of honor. So we have to keep that in mind. He also is very passionate about it. After he was whisked away, he killed a lot of warhounds, as they were known then, before becoming the world leaders, commanders, and those in a command staff type of thing. Those that tried to speak with him and reason with him, he was just in a fury of red rage and would just kill them. So it took some time. But anyways, so how do we change this? Well, much like Angron mentioned, how the Emperor did not free the warhounds and order them to battle to fight alongside his gladiators to overthrow the planet, we're going to have that happen, basically, because part of Angron's kind of tragedy isn't just the Butcher's Nails, so we never get to see him without their influence. It's also the fact that he's the only Primarch to fail in unifying his planet that we are aware of. So the Emperor is basically going to say, I can't just deliver salvation to you, but these are of your lineage. They will fight alongside you, liberate the planet. And that'll be the first big campaign in which Angron kind of cuts his teeth as the Imperial commander. it's a sense of honor and duty that will kind of help Angron stay in the light, or keep the Emperor in his kind of favorable graces. So just wanted to kind of mention that. So what we have is a loyal Angron. Now, despite it being loyal for this what-if scenario for this whole series, we still have the problem of the Butcher's Nails. The Butcher's Nails were never meant for Primarch physiology, and they in fact were slowly killing him. Well, unlike, again, this is later writings, and the Butcher's Nails being fatal for the Primarch, and the Emperor just kind of leaves him to die, saying, okay, oh, he's going to die before the Great Crusade's over, whatever, it's just the nature of the beast, which was just basically writing to make sure he would definitely go traitor with the help of Lorgar, quote-unquote, curing him. We're going to have a bit more of a caring for a vital piece on the chessboard here, and we're going to have the Emperor, Angron, and Lorgar kind of pull together to halt the progression of the Butcher's Nails much earlier, pretty much right away when he's first rediscovered and reunited. Pretty much the first thing right after that is going to be his not so much curing or removal of the Butcher's Nails, because it's not possible, because that will kill him, but to keep it from digging deeper and biting deeper into his psyche, into his cranium, into his brain. Just kind of limit where it's at in terms of progressing any further to drive him insane and kill him. So we can have some of that chicanery going on with the Emperor and his capabilities, Lorgar and his understanding of stuff as well, and seeing it in his brother. And this is going to make Lorgar and Angron kind of be not close, because Angron's not particularly close with any of his brothers, but he's going to have a bit more of a favorable view for Lorgar than other Primarchs. So that's Angron, all set up to be loyal for the Emperor. So we have this loyal Angron that has had some Butcher's Nails taint, but it hasn't been allowed to progress as unchecked and unregulated as it is in the normal fluff. This means that the world leaders aren't going to get rampant outfittings of the Butcher's Nails themselves. That also means that their Librarius is going to stay intact, even with the Council of Nicaea and all that stuff, or whatever might have happened. At the end result, we're still going to have a Librarius for the world leaders. So what's the purpose? Why go and elaborate all this backstory stuff, kind of set up the foundation? What's the deal with Angron? Well, it's that aggressive, close-in, bloodthirsty warrior's honor sense. Angron is a close-quarters master. I mean, the raw aggression and capability and fighting prowess that Angron has is unparalleled. It's a foe you don't want to clash swords with or axes with. And the world leaders adopt that concept. And while they represent just the aggressive horrors of war, the pure butchery of war is what they represent, and kind of what Angron is about, they are useful in a lacking of a certain collateral damage sense. What do I mean by that? Well, when they're unleashed on a let's say a world full of discontent and potential corruption and just insurrectionists, there is going to be collateral damage. So there will be some, no matter how much you try to not be. Buildings will get damaged and destroyed. And in the case of the world leaders, that berserk fury is going to hack things down and not leave much room for fend or foe. So they're a bit extremist, if you will, in that regard. Basically, as they have done in one night, slaughtered a whole Hive City's population. That's the extreme lengths to go through. They represent that horror of war, and it's that reputation that will precede them and potentially cow whole systems, before any real violence happens or war happens. And if they don't give in, or if they give in too late, the world leaders will not stop. Because Angron is also kind of follows a very kind of straightforward and kind of common sense philosophy. And when you really think about it, it's straightforward, it's brutal, but it's very Angron, and that is, a pacified enemy is still an enemy, right? The war isn't over until every last enemy is dead. If they're pacified, they're still an enemy. They just aren't fighting back against you yet. They are pacified. They are conquered. A conquered enemy, a pacified enemy is still an enemy. They're not magically going to come to your side necessarily. They're just going to bide their time. And Angron really believes in the fact that, okay, we won't pacify, we won't conquer, we will destroy. Plus, in doing this, the kind of infrastructure of a planet, like a forge world or some other type of infrastructure on a planet, technology on a planet, is going to more or less remain relatively intact in comparison to somebody like the Iron Warriors or even the Imperial Fist showing up, right? Because they're going to get very close and very brutal, where other forces are going to just gun things down with overwhelming firepower or get close in with nefarious chemical weapons or things of that nature. They're going to clear things room by room, city block by city block. They're going to rip things apart. And while it's going to be very gory, and in terms of collateral damage of a population, that's going to be high. Where you don't care for the population, don't need them, don't want them, want to get it cleared out for repopulation, if you will, resettling, the world leaders are going to be experts at that, and the infrastructure is going to stay intact. So this is one of the legions that aren't going to be paraded around and showcased to wow an audience, right? This is going to be one of those legions that war is what they do. And while being an advisor to the Emperor, as all Primarchs will be, Angron is going to be very blunt, to the point, but not foolish. Like Angron, no Primarch's an idiot. Angron understands how to use artillery, understands the concept of tank warfare and heavy armored columns and space battles and the like. And while he understands that, it's all going to be filtered through his brutal, direct methods. And is this sense of warfare, this warrior's honors type of code that he and his legion are going to abide by and follow, is what's going to allow them not so much to do surgical strikes, but to just close the gap and rip the enemy apart at close combat, which does two things. It assures the enemy's destruction. There's no maybe we got them, maybe we didn't, maybe they survived the bombardment to fight later. It's going to ensure the enemy is dead, because a dead enemy is the only true way to victory in their eyes. And they are going to be aware of, critical objectives to a certain degree as well. This is going to make them really good at clearing out ships. Very aggressive, fast-moving, assaulting, brutal force for Zone Mortalis conflicts, shipboarding conflicts. While the Imperial Fists are masters of kind of naval warfare and shipboarding, the world leaders are going to be masters of the brutal, sweeping offensive of close combat. And therefore, breaching an enemy ship and charging through where things are confined and you're going to have close quarters conflicts, they're going to be naturally adept at. So basically all these things, we're looking at a very much an aspect of the aggressive horror, butcher nature of war, when an enemy absolutely needs to be wiped out, but you want to keep the planet more or less intact. The world leaders are the way to go, as opposed to the Iron Warriors or the Imperial Fist or even the Death Guard or anything like that. They're also going to serve some purpose against some Xenos, right? Orcs value strength. You can say in an orc sense, they respect it. They prefer that direct combat. Well, the only way you can really, aside from warpy magic stuff, the way to break an orc is to just deliver that in spades and overwhelm that very sense that they enjoy. And the world leaders, especially with Angron at the head of it, can definitely deliver. So that's what I think, personally, Angron and his legion will be doing. I think Angron's purpose, which we never get to see 100%, we're never going to because of the Butcher's Nails, maybe sparking a bit more of an aggressive nature, a bit more of that berserk, close the gap and rip them apart nature, where maybe he would have valued more artillery strikes, or maybe would have valued, support columns and the like. He's going to really have a high amount of fast-going transports and teleport strikes going on in his place to get to the grips with the enemy really quickly. It's not going to be something that is like Raven Guard or like the White Scars or anything in that regard. They have a very different nature of swift combat, so do the Space Wolves. But it's going to be a case of, gun it down. They're going to have heavy support. They're going to have their Librarius and everything like that going for them, but everything is going to be with quickening and getting in there and ripping them apart. So to obliterate a foe, to ensure that the enemy is truly beaten because they are extinct, basically, you could say, is going to be the world leader's way. Very much eating worlds, but as opposed to blowing them apart or ripping them down and making it all level, leveling everything, raising cities, you're going to have hive cities that are just going to need all the blood and gore cleansed out of it, but more or less their manufactorum infrastructure remaining intact, which can be beneficial. Very brutal, but still pretty beneficial depending upon the planet or the ship that they are going to be ripping things apart inside of. Anyways, that's my thoughts on Angron. Kind of a tragic Primarch when you really look at his standard fluff of stuff, and that could be a ramble for another time. But I think, I think he gets a little bit of bad rap as being, a simplistic Primarch, and he's got his own code of honor and his own brutal tactics. I mean, their methods may be crude in people's eyes and therefore assume that they are simplistic, but they are effective. So that's where I think his strengths will lie. And in this theoretical setting, this Imperial Truth-driven Imperium, there would be a very active campaigning legion with Angron more often out in the field than at the Emperor's side to give counsel. When he does, it's going to be very curt, very brief, very to the point, very no frills, rip them apart, feed them, don't try to pacify them, just kill them type of counseling, I would imagine. What are your thoughts on Angron? Share them in the comment section below. So with that said, thanks very much for sticking through it. And more Primarchs to come, obviously. We are, I guess you could say, roughly about halfway there or so. So, yeah, fun stuff. Anyways, that's it. And until the next one, leave your question, comments, or requests in the comment section. And take it easy.